Hey guys, it's Plozible, and today I'm going to be doing a prediction for the Star Butterfly vs. Steven Universe matchup that's going to be coming out in a couple of days for Death Battle. So, I just want to say, this is a dream matchup of mine, and I'm so happy that they're doing this match because it's got two of my favorite cartoon characters. So I figured, you know, why not do another prediction, kind of like how I did for Archie Sonic versus the Flash. So, of course, it'll be in a similar format to that, but we'll just have to go into that. A couple of things before I start. So I just want to say I'm a little sorry that I've been busy. I haven't been able to do much on YouTube because of that, just a lot of school stuff, but now I'm out and I'm able to make videos again. Hopefully there won't be any delay. I'll alert you guys if there is. And another one things like just related to the matchup that I wanted to discuss is that in regards to versions, I'm going to be using Season 4 Star, and just to make it clear, I'm talking about Star before cleaved, because if we use the Star after she destroyed the magic, well, I guess she wouldn't have any power and she'd lose to Steven in this match. I don't know. And just for Steven as well, we're going to be using the one from Steven Universe Future, like the end of it, because, well, unlike Star, he didn't lose his powers. Alright, but on a more serious note as well, in regards to Steven as well, I need to mention that whenever I mention some things for like Pink Steven and Monster Steven, I'm going to be using them a bit interchangeably, because Monster Steven, he's not exactly Pink Steven. It's more like, it's like an enhanced form of Pink Steven, basically, if we want to go by Garnet's statements. And just when it comes to analyzing them in this video, I'm going to be doing the strength and durability, the speed, and the abilities like I did for last time for Flash versus Sonic. But I'm also going to be adding on intelligence this time because I realized I should probably add that on because it gives you an idea of how, like, combat capable or just in general how smart they are. Because, you know, intelligence can be a factor in these battles too, because someone can be stupid but have really good abilities that they could use in a battle. Also, I will be linking calculations in the description. Trust me, there are quite a few of these. I just need those in order to express the terms of power that some of these characters have, like in general when I'm making comparisons. So, with all that out of the way, let's begin. So the first thing I'm going to be talking about here is the strength, and how that also ties into the durability is pretty obvious, but I'm going to be talking about that. So the first thing I want to make note of, though, is that a lot of Steven's feats involve him scaling to other people. I mean, he does have some of his own feats that he's performed / survived that would indicate his scaling, but a lot of his scaling does come from scaling to other people. Just thought I'd give a heads up just in case you get tired of the comparable to X thing. So the very first thing I'm actually going to be starting off with is that he's comparable to Garnet, who is unfazed by lightning. Now, of course, whenever you have lightning strikes in the real world, that kills people, but I think that's pretty obvious that we're not dealing with normal people at this point. Well, I guess they're not really people because they're gems, alien life forms, but you get what I mean. But getting even more impressive than that, Steven actually managed to survive the destruction of a gem temple, and that was calculated to be roughly around multi-city block level. And again, I'm going to be linking all of the calculations in the description if you're curious. So yeah, that one will be linked down below. And also, because he's comparable to Garnet, another one of his feats is that he's comparable to Sapphire. And Sapphire has this feat where she struck a home run baseball with the force of 2.03 terajoules, which is again in the multi-city block range. So yeah, she'd be pretty good to have on your baseball team. So mentioning Sapphire, another one of her feats is that she created a hailstorm, which was calculated to be approximately 1 megaton. And I just want to emphasize this, but a megaton is the force, or just in general, the unit that people measure for nukes. Just thought I would emphasize that for my audience members. And the last thing I'm going to be mentioning here, at least for his base, is that Steven is comparable to the rubies. And the homeworld rubies, whenever they were hit by the roaming eye, that was calculated to be hitting with the force of 274 megatons, so they no-sell that and they're just fine afterwards. So that's in the mountain level range. So I guess Steven's base should be around the mountain level range if we're establishing that. Though, one thing just before we go on to Pink Steven, because I'm going to be mentioning some of his feats too. Steven has these things called shields, just in case you don't know, which allow him to have like higher durability. He can make these bubbles that can take higher force than what he can normally take as a person. So Steven, he's able to have shields that can fend off the diamonds. Like, for example, whenever a yellow diamond tried to rush him and try to stomp on him, Steven's shield was able to completely block that just fine. So we're going to be going over a bit of the diamond strength a little later on in this section, but I just thought it would be a good reference to mention that before we get into Pink Steven. Now, it's obvious to note that Pink Steven should probably be above Lapis considering he's able to, like, take on the diamonds and all that. You know, gyms in general just can't poof the diamonds. You get what I mean. And because of that, Lapis has this feat where she stole all of the Earth's oceans overnight, and this was calculated to be around the multi-continent level of power, so just in general, that's kind of a life-wiping attack, just in case you're curious, so it just gets a little more ridiculous, but we'll go into that just a little further from here. So, Pink Steven is also able to take on a partially formed cluster. Peridot actually stated that he was stronger, but just in general though, the cluster was able to wake up and shake the planet with all these earthquakes, and considering the scale of it, it actually was calculated to be over 2.5 exatons in power with how much force it was exerting, which also falls in the multi-continental range. Now this next feat I would probably be a little bit weary of. Now this next feat is a little weird, and I can understand why some people wouldn't want to use it. I'm a little weary of it myself, but Pink Steven, of course, is able to deflect attacks from White Diamond and stagger her. That's completely fine with scaling, but there's a Gizmodo article that mentions that White Diamond is potentially responsible for Homeworld being split into two. Again, though, I would take this heavily with a grain of salt, considering that the article is more on the speculation side than confirmation. Also, the diamonds and the gems tend to use actual tech of theirs to destroy planets, not doing it themselves. This is probably the ace in the hole of Steven's feats so far, at least in terms of the death battle, so Steven's ping potential, of course, lets him be comparable to the diamonds. I think we already know this, I've already mentioned it beforehand. So, in the death battle preview, they calculated the luminosity energy of the corruption blast that the diamonds did to be 8.4 times 10 to the 38th joules in power, which is roughly enough power to destroy a dwarf star. That is a rather impressive feat. However, I do have a couple problems with this myself. The problem that I have mainly is that it assumes that White Diamond never left Homeworld. And of course, the thing that they use to support that is that it's a random offhand statement that Blue Diamond makes where she says that White hasn't left Homeworld in eons. I think it's pretty self-explanatory why eons is likely being used rhetorically here, rather than an actual time frame of a billion years. Especially when the earliest time frame reference that we have for the diamonds actually doing things is 20,000 years ago maximum. If there's no solid evidence that the blast came from Homeworld other than this statement, we would just have to stick with the distance that it came out further than the moon, which significantly lowers the result. I'll link that revised version down in the description, but just know it's not even more impressive than the Lapis feat. It's worse than that, so it's not really worth noting outside of that. I just thought that it would be important to note, though, because that's what the death battle is going by. Now, whenever I'm talking about Star, I'm gonna have to make this pretty clear, because Star has this weird case where she's physically at a certain level, but her magic can be at her level sometimes, and sometimes it can reach at a level even higher than she is. So it can go at ridiculous scales that Star would not physically scale to normally. So whenever I'm talking about Star, I'm always going to be talking about her physically first in these like general physical sections, and then the magic. Starting off with Star physically, whenever she was throwing a chunk of rock at a door, she managed to fragment it, so pretty normal stuff. She also has another feat where she endured a fire beam from a flaming board that can melt icy structures rather easily, so Star can take the heat if you get what I mean. She can also harm monsters who can take her lower tier spells. Again, we'll have some reference for her lower tier spells later on, but again, just something I thought that we'd bring up. Star should be comparable to her dad, of course. And River, who was her dad, managed to level a good chunk of the forest when landing, which comes out to be 32.6 gigajoules. He also managed to come out looking pretty smooth from it too. This is probably Star's most impressive feat at least, but she managed to survive the Whispering spell, which destroyed Ludo's castle previously, and a section of the Butterfly Castle in this instance. Now of course, the instance that she survives it has a different damage scale, but it should be the same power in use. She was able to survive that, so that would put her around the city block range from the calculation that I have linked in the description. Going onward to her magic, of course, she's able to have pretty standard magical blasts like the ones that can destroy a billboard because she's having some teenage angst, or she can destroy watchtowers with her magical blast pretty easily too. If we're going a bit more impressive, of course, we have the Whispering spell, which this gives a bit of a reference to the previous feat I mentioned, but the Whispering spell destroying Ludo's castle hit with the force of approximately 266 gigajoules. She's also implied to have an extinction level blast of magic. For comparison, the Chicxulub, the Chicxulub? I have no idea how you pronounce this thing. The meteor that killed the dinosaurs, basically, is a similar level extinction event that struck the force with up to 13.8 petatons of force, which is 921 billion times the force behind the atomic bomb named Little Boy, and that's the one that destroyed Hiroshima. Yeah, so she can pack some power, and that's not even up there with her most impressive spells. It's an impressive one, but not one of the most impressive. She also has her mega explosive crystal laser, which can neutralize entire planets. And this is probably where her magic starts capping out a little bit, but she has these cosmic feats where she's able to reach pretty ridiculous scales too. So the wand, by just having the different stars in the episode, it was able to override the existence of timelines if Star had stayed there long enough. Now, this feat isn't really done with the wand, but it's just done by dipping down, but Star is able to dip down much like this person I'm going to be mentioning, who is Skywyn, and Skywyn was able to destroy an entire dimension just by dipping down. And of course, Star should be able to replicate that feat because she's one of the most skilled queens of Uni, just in general. One thing I find funny, but just within the general first 5 minutes of the first episode of the show, Moon mentions that the wand can accidentally destroy the universe if it falls into the wrong hands, so that's probably calling back to what Skywyn did earlier, but in general, it's just another impressive feat. And Star, also with magic, whenever she had a very small amount of it, because, you know, before this, she ended up cleaving the magic, almost destroying all of it. She managed to fuse together Earth and Muni's dimensions with Marco, when most of the magic was just kind of gone. Of course, it could go even beyond that too. I just feel important to mention that we know that it's at least Earth and Uni, but it could likely be more of the dimensions because Dragon Cycles appear after the merge, and Dragon Cycles only appear in Hekapu's dimension, so there are probably more dimensions included in that merge too, and there are an infinite amount of universes in the Star universe, so yeah, it could potentially be a multiversal plus feat, kind of like the other speedsters that we knew in the other episode. The wand is also referred to as being the most powerful relic in existence by Ludo, and just to give a general idea of what that would entail, this is a universe where garbage can destroy entire universes, so yeah, we're getting up there in the feats when it comes to how powerful the wand is and how powerful Star's magic is. So, also, Star is comparable to Eclipsa considering that Baby compares Star to Eclipsa. Eclipsa has a spell that is called a spell with no name, or it's called the Total Annihilation spell. You can call it whatever you want. It's basically the spell that could eat every dimension in existence, and again, there are an infinite variety of those dimensions in the Star universe. So another multiversal plus feat. Toffee, when he also had half of the wand, he was able to kill Omnitraxis, and Omnitraxis is able to stop the multiverse from eating itself, and he embodies its magic and its space-time, which includes those infinite timelines mentioned earlier. So yeah, Star with her highest magic can go up to the multiversal plus range, and just how powerful she can be. I think the result is starting to get a little more self-explanatory here, but you know, we'll continue for the sake of it. So, the next thing I'm going to be talking about here is the speed. For one of Steven's lower showings, he moved at faster than ice speeds as he appeared as a blur to Greg, and even Greg comments on how fast Steven was here. Again, being comparable to a lot of the other gems, he should be comparable to Ruby, and Ruby was able to move fast enough that she caught on fire by sheer movement. And just to reach that level of speed and catch fire, you have to move at Mach 5 speed, which is faster than a lot of airplanes, and she just does this casually, so yeah, of course they're even higher. And you can prove this because much like the other crystal gems, Steven was able to avoid a bunch of lasers that were sent down by light prisms by Peridot. Amethyst specifically dodging them got calculated at 29% of the speed of light too, so it should probably be around the same result for the rest of the crystal gems too. And he also managed to dodge a bunch of other lasers from the hollow pearls alongside Amethyst, so again, him dodging lasers is pretty consistent. I think that we don't doubt that. Being comparable to Pearl 2, Pearl was able to navigate the roaming eye at the speeds of 33% of the speed of light, again calculation down in the description, and that was from leaving Earth at that speed. I think we've solidly put down that Steven is relativistic. And of course, when talking about Pink Steven, he's faster, and one of the feats we can go over is that he would upscale from Lapis, who is able to travel from Earth to Homeworld and did the exact same thing going back in the span of just a few weeks, which would mean that she'd be moving at faster than light speeds, well, massively faster than light speeds at this point. It's not that I have a problem with the feat itself, I mean, it's legit. I just have a problem with the way that it's scaled over. The main issue I have with this is that it should realistically only scale to Lapis's travel speed, and Gem's being faster than light is heavily contradictory. For one, they are light compositions, so moving faster than light would mess up their mass. Secondly, we've seen their bodies literally cannot withstand faster than light travel, and the reason as to why they can't builds off the first part. There are consistent showings in Steven Universe that without calibrated protections and whatnot, Gems openly cannot handle above light speed movement. So of course this also ties into a couple of other feats too, where Gems are able to navigate ships at massively faster than light speeds or like that. It's just too contradictory, and there's some in-lore stuff that can help explain it. So building off the aforementioned Diamond Beam feat as well for Pink Steven could obviously scale because he was able to react to White Diamond. The actual death battle doesn't have a speed calc up for it yet, so I'm going to be trying to do my own to see what theirs would probably look like. As shown in the movie, Homeworld is at least 2 spiral galaxies away. The second closest spiral galaxy away in our local group is known as the Pinwheel Galaxy, so if we said that the blast came from Homeworld, the Pinwheel Galaxy is 2.723 million light years away. There's a couple different ways that we could treat the blast, because time frame wise, it seems to vary because somehow Pearl's recollection of it actually takes less time than Garnet's summarized few minute story. For the sake of it, we'll use the on-screen time frame for Pearl's recollection and one of 5 minutes, since they did say that this blast was coming, so they warned Homeworld troops to get out there as fast as they could. For the 5-minute time frame, the beam would be crossing 544,600 light years per minute, a pace of 286,437,800,000 times faster than light, so pretty darn fast. But if we want to use Pearl's version, it took 49 frames before the blast fully engulfed everything, which is roughly 1.63 seconds. That means the blast is crossing 1,670,552.15 light years a second, meaning the speed is, 52,618,616,441,741.03 times faster than light. Yeah, that was quite the mouthful to say. So I've already voiced my disagreements on the distance, so obviously I wouldn't agree on the Diamond Blast being that fast or high in speed. The actual thing, if you want to look at it in the description, I can tell you it's not as fast as this, and it would probably be even slower than all of the massively faster than light feats, but I don't know, that was just a crazy number to say. But obviously moving on to Star though, because we've been over all of Steven's speed feats. So, going for Star physically at least, she managed to outpace a group of angry pigeons when pigeons could fly at an average speed of 60 miles per hour. And this is all because Marco broke a pigeon's foot, by the way. Also, similar to Steven, she moved at faster than eye speed because she appeared as a blur to her family. And also, going on to mention her family, she's also be comparable to her dad, who ran 10 miles in 5 minutes, which is 120 miles per hour, with Marco even noting that that's kind of impressive. Going up in the food chain of the speed feats, she's also capable of reacting to lightning while on one of her spells. And mentioning some of the lightning feats too, Meteora, who was a person that Star fought with some of her spells and physically, Meteor was able to redirect lightning that River had shot out to hurt her. Now this next feat is a little controversial depending on whether or not you buy Hekapoo use the dimensional scissors to do the whole run around the planet thing, but Star is comparable to Marco of course, and Marco is able to fight off dozens of Hekapoo clones. It's worth noting that Hekapoo's running speed allowed her to wrap around the planet 3 times when going against Marco, so we don't know exactly how big Hekapoo's planet is, but we'll just use the circumference of Earth as a comparison, and that's roughly 24,901 miles. We'll get time frames by going at 30 frames per second too. So, for the first time, Hekapoo laps the planet in 34 frames. That means the time frame is 1.13 seconds for Hekapoo. That would give us 22,036.28 miles per second, which is 11.8 times the speed of light. For the second time, Hekapoo laps the planet in 9 frames. That means the time frame would be 3 seconds for Hekapoo. That would give us 83,003.3 miles per second, which would be 44.6% of the speed of light. And for the third time, which is probably the less impressive version of this, Hekapoo managed to lap the planet in 80 frames. That means the time frame is 2.66 seconds for Hekapoo. That would give us 9,361.28 miles per second, which is just barely above 5% of the speed of light. So yeah, she does have some relativistic skilling when it comes to these feats. And also worth noting, she was able to react to a laser beam in which the movement with that also got calculated at 26% of the speed of light. And of course, she's able to react to Moon's lasers at a rather close range. I don't have an exact calculation of this, but it should probably be higher. Just getting into her magic now, because of course Star's magic can be even higher than what she is physically. So just in general, of course, some of her lower attacks are like laser-like properties as mentioned beforehand, so she should have like speed of light attacks minimum. Her lower tier spells are comparable to her own speed too, of course, so yeah, they should probably be fine to be around that speed. Of course, her actual higher tier spells go way faster than that. With half of the wand, Toppy was able to have a surprise blast on Omnitraxis and managed to kill him. Omnitraxis reducing himself from a galaxy size was calculated to roughly be 96.6 trillion times the speed of light. Yes, reducing your size does count as a speed feat because you would have to know when to stop yourself. I know that someone's going to bring that up otherwise, but yeah, Mr. Omnitraxis has pretty fast speed, but it goes even faster. Skywind had this magical blast that we mentioned earlier, and from what we see in the book, it encompassed the entire universe that she was inside. An exact time frame is unknown with this feat, but she treats the blast effects as being rather quickly in the Magic Book of Spells, so let's just say that she took a minute and that she's in the center of the universe to lowball this feat as much as we can. The diameter of the universe is 93.016 billion light years in size. Starting from the center, we'd have to get half of that for the radius to get 46.508 billion light years. And going from that many light years per minute, we get 24.5 quadrillion times the speed of light. So yeah, pretty darn fast. That's faster than even if we take Steven's highest calc with the Diamond Blast, even if I don't agree with that. And just for one last feat, she was able to intercept Baby leaving with her magic. Baby is able to presumably travel between universes with sheer speed because she travels as a gas cloud from Muni to Earth with sheer speed alone. So the next section that we have is the abilities/hacks section of the video, and before I get into this, I just want to say I'm only going to be going over the relevant abilities and the combat applicable ones, because if we just went over every single ability that both of them had, it would be way longer than it needs to be, especially for Star. There will be a couple exceptions, but I just wanted to lay that down just in case someone's like, oh, why didn't you mention that Star can make random snakes appear out of nowhere? Well, now you know the reason. Beginning with Steven was able to have energy manipulation, force field creation, and weapon creation. Steven is able to create pink constructs such as his shield, a bubble to protect him, boxing gloves, spiked shields, and many more depending on how he morphs his powers. His bubble that he can also use lets him breathe in space too, so extra plus there. Another thing that Steven has in his base is that he's able to heal injuries such as broken bones, like almost instantly or at least in pretty short time frames, so some of the minor damages that might be caused in the battle to him he could probably just heal away pretty quickly. He also has this thing called bubbling, where he can seal away objects and send them to the place that he imagines. Now, I will say that there is an obvious limit on things that he can bubble, as Peridot finds the idea of him bubbling the entire cluster to be insane. He manages to do it, but he does it in conjunction with the other gems inside the cluster too, but I just thought that it would be important to mention that before we go on. Also, he has another ability called Astral Projection, which is also used with his aura too. So, Steven is able to project himself into the astral plane and project an aura that can overpower blue and yellow diamonds to feel that he is Pink Diamond's descendant and all that. So, Steven also has vibration manipulation, as contact with the shield can produce vibrations potent enough to disrupt Lapis's water clones on a molecular level. Steven also, when it comes to things regarding matter, he can also manipulate his own density. Steven manipulating his own density is also really dependent on his emotions. For example, being happier allows him to float slowly and become very light, while unhappiness makes him fall quicker and descend to the ground just way faster than he normally would. You know how we mentioned regeneration earlier, Steven, that partially comes from his healing abilities, as Steven can heal himself through his things like saliva, tears, etc., or others when it comes to these types of things, or it's so potent enough that he can even bring people back from the dead with his tears too. Another thing for Steven that he has is that he can possess people when he's asleep, like Lars. I should mention that I only included this in the event that he somehow gets knocked out mid-combat only and Star just manages to leave him like that and somehow wouldn't kill him. Just, you know, it's something that I do have to bring up. And whenever he has the thing called the Glass of Time, Steven is able to create different timelines through time traveling back to a specific moment, and he can destroy these timelines through the Hourglass too. But now we're done with the base Steven stuff basically, now we should just go on to the Pink Steven stuff. So, Pink Steven, he can pull a Jesus and walk on air. I don't know why he can, but he can. So for Pink Steven as well, he also has sound manipulation, and this comes from the fact that he can let out these screams that end up doing very heavy environmental damage, and these sound waves would normally be, you know, sound if you like scream at someone, you're not going to do much to them, but his sound waves are able to cause environmental damage, they're able to harm other people, and even stagger White Diamond. There's also the fact that he has resistance to transmutation in this form too. He was unaffected by Yellow Diamond's ability to reconfigure the form of gems in his monster form. He was also unaffected by Blue Diamond's empathic manipulation / mind manipulation. Her new powers allowed her to make people happy through her empathic powers, but nah, he just blew that away as if it was nothing to him. So the next thing I'm going to be talking about here is for Star. So Star, this is pretty obvious, but she is very skilled in magic, as she's even able to use magic as her most basic form of offense, and even without the wand and all that. But even without magic, she's also a pretty formidable force with her martial arts, because again, outside of the wand, she's also shown to be a pretty competent fist-to-fist fighter with the different monsters in Ludo's army. And as part of her martial arts set, Star also likes to incorporate acrobatics into how she fights different people, such as being agile enough to do things like flips, backflips, somersaults. You get the general idea. She's pretty acrobatic. She's been capable of interacting and seeing different ghosts, so she can interact with beings on the astral plane. But again, that's not her most powerful asset. It's mostly her magic, and with her magic, she has the ability to do many different things, such as her summoning. She's able to bring forth different creatures like the Warnicorn Stampede and the Narwhals from her Narwhal Blast, the Spider with the Top Hat Blast, and many other different things, just in general when it comes to her summoning. Also, she's able to create portals and do BFR through them as well. She can create portals with dimensional scissors, or she can even do it in her new Muberty form, just in general to travel between different dimensions, and she has actually used them to throw people into different dimensions too, like Ludo. Through her spells too, she also can transform into the thing called the Rainbow Kaiju Battle Armor, which is able to fight off beings roughly comparable to her top spells, so either Universal Plus or Multiversal Plus stuff depending on what you're siding with. She also has ice manipulation, as she can encase Tom inside of an ice cube, even negating the fire powers that he had going on during the moment. There was also a moment in the show where Star died to Toffee, and she came back from the dead to have this be resurrection. So if you kill Star, she can just come back from the dead and be like, nah, I'm still alive. So another thing that Star has is Time Stop, when she froze time on a universal, if not multiversal scale through one of her spells. And she even had to go to the planes of time to make Father Time restart time because it was just that strong. Star also has time manipulation, as she should also be able to create the time loops much like Skywin, considering that she read Skywin's chapter in its entirety as well. And if we're going by the idea that Star has read Skywin's chapter, Skywin also has a spell that deleted an entire planet's gravity, so yeah, I guess Star can just do that too. Star also has spells that can deconstruct people, and I should mention deconstruction and matter manipulation while they're kind of similar. Deconstruction is like basically just taking people apart on a material level like matter. She can do this through one of Skywin's spells, of course, which can turn someone to ash, or she can even do it with one of her own spells too, so either way, Star has means of deconstructing people materially. So Star also has illusion creation through the Jellybean Hallucination Blast, which, as its name implies, it creates hallucinatory jelly beans that makes it hard for the opponent to focus in the middle of battle. it can pretty much disorient her opponents and leave them open for whatever attack that she wants to follow up with. Star also has power nullification, as queens have shown the ability to completely negate abilities that they like, such as Crescenta being able to remove a ponyhead's ability to fly, or Stellaria undoing the effects of Romulus's crystals. Just in general, she can nullify different powers based on the spells that she wants. So Star also has telekinesis, as she can replicate Levitado to send people flying into the sky like Ludo could. Star also has transmutation, as she can even turn people and different objects into things like animals, such as when she turned some actor into a frog thing. Star also has a resistance to mind manipulation, as she was able to leave the department area of Quest Buy just fine despite the sloth saying that it would turn her brains to goo along with her friends. So I think that we've done enough for base Star, and that we should go on to her transformation, and as I mentioned beforehand, this transformation is called New Muberty, but in order to make this easier so I don't keep mispronouncing the name or stumbling upon it, I'm just gonna call it Butterfly Star, even though her last name is Butterfly, but I'll just say the Butterfly first so you have a general idea of what I'm talking about. So, Butterfly Star is able to perform unassisted flight in her New Muberty form, as she's able to fly around and shoot spells pretty freely. She also has Cosmic Awareness in this form, as her Omnitidia eyes allow her to view multiple, if not all, dimensions at the exact same time. And within this form as well, Star is able to do a few things as well that are pretty neat. Part of her New Muberty form allows her to manipulate her density and grow 6 arms for more efficient spell casting. For the density, it's kind of similar to what Stevens is that she can manipulate her density depending on her emotions. Star also has conceptual manipulation in this form, as she recreated the entire concept of magic, even after Toffee had completely corrupted it to being virtually nothing. And lastly, one of the most impressive things that this form can do is that it can negate regeneration, as it negated Toffee's regeneration with her magical blast, when Moon previously had to use dark magic just to do the exact same thing. Toffee's regeneration allowed him to come back from just a finger. Honestly, it might be even higher too, considering that Hakapu said that Septarians are pretty much unkillable by the general magic that they have, which again, it would include the previous spells such as the deconstruction spell that destroys one's physical body. So the last thing I'm going to be talking about here is the intelligence, and there's not as much to go over as the other sections, but it's still something that can kind of be factored into this fight. So Steven has general training from characters such as Pearl, Garnet, Jasper, and many more who are combat geniuses, some of them going up to thousands of years of experience, of course. Steven was also, even despite being in grade school for just one day, he managed to pass the final exam for what would have been his school grade with extra credit. This shows that the education that he has under the Crystal Gems is unironically better than the school education system in America, though keep in mind that Connie did do better than him, so there's a little room on just how smart Steven is. I should say, even though that Steven has some occasional sparks and all that, he's a little creative in combat, he is somewhat held back by his naivety and ignorance on some of the more streamlined main things. I will say that this has kind of been reduced in Steven Universe Future. He's not as aloof as he was when he was a child, but he still does have his moments. Now, moving on to Star, I'd like to note something just before we get into this. Now, let's get into Star. So, I'm going to just bring this up because I know if I don't, someone's going to mention it otherwise, and it's going to be something that I have to clarify outside of the video when the video is reaching my main audience regardless. So, I'd like to note that Star acting like an airhead is something that she does intentionally. It's something that she literally admits in her journal, so that's not something that we're going to be counting against her. Now, when it comes to how smart Star actually is and just how skilled she is, she's noted to have been far beyond Moon's skill level at her age, and her magic proficiency is comparable to that of Eclipsa according to Baby. Star also mastered her New Muberty form as a teenager, despite Moon stating it took herself years to do the exact same thing. Continuing on how Star is pretty much just a prodigy, she managed to learn how to cast spells wandless as a 15-year-old when Moon said that she only learned how to do so when she was 19. Star, even without the wand, of course, as we mentioned beforehand, she was trained to fight fist to fist, learned how to snap a neck as a toddler, and she was trained in swordplay when starting just off at that very young age. And the last thing, just in general, she's just implied to be knowledgeable on different aspects of the space-time continuum and multiverse theory, and regarding to how the different dimensions work and how travel between them works. So, you know, general smart stuff, Albert Einstein and Stephen Hawking levels of intelligent. So if it's not pretty obvious who I think wins this matchup, I'm just going to deconstruct some things just in general to show why I think who wins is the actual winner. So in general, let's start off with Star. Well, Star pretty much holds every single advantage here aside from a couple. Star's spells can easily give her the strength advantage, as her top spells are in the cosmic range, and that's something Steven just simply hasn't dealt with before. Her magical shields can easily ward off Steven's attacks too, considering that they've held off beings far more powerful than anything that Steven can dish out, even if we want to use his highest end feats. Honestly, I consider the Rainbow Kaiju battle armor pretty much an advantage of its own, because the moment that Star goes into that, it's just game over for Steven. She's just faster physically and just physically more powerful if she goes into that transformation. Her top magic also can easily blitz Steven, as it goes far, far beyond just anything that he's done. In general, I would say that Star has the better abilities to easily win this matchup. She has so many conditions to win this match that it's not funny. She's also just far more combat savvy and smart than Steven just on a general level. And I didn't mention this in the intelligence section, but Marco, he's able to fight against Hekapu. And Hekapu, considering how time passes in our dimension, she probably has like, I don't know, like millions of years of experience or something stupid like that, just from how long that she's managed to live. So yeah, Star would be kind of comparable to that to a degree, and I think that that trumps just anything that Steven has. And I will say that one thing that actually makes this matchup a little closer just in general is that, at least physically, like without the magic and all that, just physically between the two of them, they both have pretty relative speed. I would say that Star is somewhat faster, but it's not by a super big amount. It's honestly pretty negligible, if anything. The biggest problem that I see that Star has, at least, they're not even really big problems, it's just in general. The biggest problems that she would have is that she's weaker physically than Steven, and that she's less experienced. Now, whenever it comes to Steven, again, he's stronger physically, sure, and he does have more general experience, and that they are equal in speed, but just in general, he gets blitzed by the top magic really easily. He has little to no useful abilities to actually use against Star for a win, and he just gets outskilled really badly. There are a couple notes to make about this matchup too, such as Steven can't put down Star, like, at all because of the resurrection, so, like, literally, if Steven tried to kill Star at all, she would just come back and just probably instantly kill him. And we know that resurrection does count for death battles too, because in the Poe versus Iron Fist death battle, they pretty much mentioned that even if you killed Poe, he would just come back from the spirit realm and just come back to fight Iron Fist. It's pretty much the exact same case here. Bubbling is also irrelevant because Star has dimensional travel in her puberty form, so she can just come back from anything that she just gets BFR'd to. A lot of his gem hacks is also pretty irrelevant in the first place because it can't work on non-gems. I think that's just a general problem with, like, most of the gems just in matchups, like Blue Diamond's Empathic Aura, it literally can't work on non-gems. That's the problem with a lot of gems in a lot of these versus matches. The mental hacks and the possession hacks also likely won't matter in this matchup because Star can resist both of them. Even if Steven goes into the astral plane, it literally would not help because, as we've been over beforehand, Star can see and fight ghosts too, so if Steven goes into the astral plane, he just gets killed there too. Steven's regeneration also doesn't really mean much because Star's puberty form, as I mentioned beforehand too, can negate regeneration. So yeah, Steven's just gonna try to regenerate something minor that he gets, and then he's just gonna get blasted. Then boom, he can't regenerate from that. So just to be fair too, there are a couple things that Star really can't do to Steven as well, such as she can't really transmute Steven in his pink state. As we've been over, Steven can resist that kind of stuff from Yellow Diamond. Steven can also likely resist the Jellybean Hallucination Blast too, considering his mental resistances. So what do I think Star can win with? Well, as I mentioned beforehand, her top spells can easily overpower and outspeed Steven just in general, regardless of where you're going to be putting him. She could send Steven to a different dimension through her portals, just like she did to Ludo as well. She could incapacitate Steven in a block of ice to just make sure he can't fight. She could just likely just send Steven to a time loop where he just keeps doing whatever he was doing beforehand, kind of like a Doctor Strange moment. She could Levitato him away and he just goes bye-bye, he just can't really come back. I guess she could delete the gravity of the planet and Steven really wouldn't be able to come back to the planet. I mean, he could survive, probably, sure, because he can create a bubble around himself, but he would just be gone. He couldn't really come back to the battlefield. In general as well, he also would just kind of falter to the deconstruction. He has regeneration, but he can't come back from being turned to ashes. Just in general, just what solidifies this match as being just so unfair, just so much in the favor of Star? Star basically can win with whatever she wants, and you may be confused about that, but her magic is only limited by by her imagination. And just as general proof of this, Moon erased Sebastian's mind with a mind eraser spell by just having the intent behind mind eraser pew pew. So just in general, whenever it comes to magic, whenever they think something, it could likely happen. Now, of course, there are obvious limits as to what Star could conjure up in response to whatever Steven has, but you get what I mean. Star just has so many abilities she could potentially use to just beat Steven here. It's not funny, and Star has so many win conditions. Now, what does Steven have? Well, he does have the Glass of Time, I guess. He could destroy Star in like a different timeline, make sure that she's gone. I guess that could work. The only problem though is that the Glass of Time is not really part of his standard equipment, so I have no idea if Death Battle will even include that. I really don't even think that they'll use that in the battle, but who knows, maybe they will. And the other thing is that he could theoretically incapacitate Star by knocking her out if he got a lucky hit in or something like that, which I have a heavy doubt that that would even be accepted by Death Battle, because, you know, generally with this kind of show you just end up killing someone rather than knocking them out. And if you just end up killing Star, she'll just come back through the resurrection, so that's not really going to work. So I think I've made it pretty clear that I think that Star wins this match. She just has literally every advantage aside from like a couple on her side. It's just kind of very stacked against Steven, despite what the YouTube commenters will have you think. I will say that while this was a bit of a different video and it was probably a little rushed too, I just had a fun time making this. I hope that you guys have fun with this death battle too. I hope that just in general, whenever it comes out on the Monday on the 31st, we can all just sit back and relax and be like, whoa, that was pretty epic, man. Enough of my rambling. This has been Plozible. I had some fun. I hope you guys had fun too. And I'm signing out. Peace.